What's up guys, welcome to today's video here on the channel. Today here at Onsonic Performance we are actually supercharging this lovely Series 1 VESS. This is a Series 1 VESS Commodore that belongs to a customer of ours that's fairly local out here. So it's a 6-speed auto, L98 being Series 1. It's already fitted with what we believe is a VCM 21 camshaft. We aren't 100% sure on what it is, but we'll confirm when we pull it out because it's getting replaced anyway. So the plan for this thing, the customer actually managed to find himself an LSA blower kit that he got for a really good price. So we're going to go ahead and be installing the LSA blower kit along with converting this to flex fuel and putting in a decent fuel system for the VE. So step one of any build like this is to run it up and give us a baseline of what it's actually making at the moment. So that's what we're doing today, and next week we'll get into actually installing the supercharger and getting along with this thing. Alright, so not too bad. We ended up at a 368 on our third run. So that's pretty good baseline, you know, around that 370 wheel. That's not too bad for this thing. As you can see, it's already got a VCM over the intake radiator, over the radiator intake. So VCM OTR, plus it's already got a X-Force 3-inch exhaust with some sort of extractors. I'm not 100% sure what they are.
I think they're
Genie. So it does have just, you know, supporting mods, just your standard intake, exhaust, cam springs. And yeah, that's pretty good. So we'll go from there and we'll start, we'll pull this engine out and we'll take it as we go through what we're gonna do and get a supercharger on it, get some boost into it. Righto guys, so we're finally at a point now where we're ready to start on this VE again. We're gonna pull the motor out now so we can fit the supercharger and everything else we need to do. We've got a new converter there to go in as well. So we'll get started on ripping this engine out.
ready to get out of here.
Alright, motor's out. Sorry I didn't film much guys, I actually had to film for another video today while Rex did all this, but motor's out as you can see. We're just going to have to sit on the ground for now because apparently our engine mount stand bolts keep going walkabouts. So we'll get some more tomorrow and then we'll get into it. Alrighty guys, so we've got the motor for the VE here. I didn't work yesterday, I had some stuff to do, but Rex sort of just started pulling the covers off and having a look at this LS yesterday afternoon, and we found some pretty alarming things. So we'll go through some stuff. So all of the rockers that came out of it are fine. They're not damaged at all. All of the trunnions are great, which is a little wild because we found this in there, sitting in one of the heads. That, for all of you who can put two and two together, is a trunnion cage. So this is why we always recommend a trunnion upgrade whenever we do cam kits or any work on LS's. It's for specifically this reason, because that is a horrible thing to see. So that just about gave us a heart attack. Rex was getting the jitters. Anyway, obviously the big thing with these is they are a needle roller cage bearing. So once you see a cage in the bottom of a head, first thing you got to ask yourself is where are all the needles? Which is the big problem, is because when they explode, you end up with needle rollers all through your engine. And generally, if you pick up one of those, it's game over. So that's why we always upgrade them, because it's such a fickle little part that is often a fail point, and when it fails it's detrimental to everything else, so always upgrade them.
So the cages were sitting on that head bolt when I found them. I started looking around, and back here you can see there's some swarf. You know, there's more bits of shit there, and it's hard to see because of the oil, but there's actually a couple of needles that were sitting on that head bolt.
Yep.
And that was what started to concern me, is that there were still needles and pieces up in here that no one bothered to clean out. Where was the rest of them that they didn't bother to?
Well, there was a cage. There was a trunnion cage in the head that no one bothered to clean out.
Yeah, it's not like they're a small piece of debris that's like really hard to find. Like as soon as I looked at it, I was like, oh. So the first thing I thought was, how did we not hear that rocker going nuts? And but all of the rockers in this motor are perfectly fine. So
someone's done the dodgy and fixed the rocker and not bothered to clean it out and then sold it to our poor customer. So given those findings, Rex decided to pull the sump and the winch tray and have a look. And yeah, sure enough, as you'd expect, The sump is absolutely just full of all these needle rollers that no one ever bothered to clean out. No one ever bothered to actually fix this thing properly. So this is the result of a trunnion failure that has then obviously been bodgy fixed and then sold on. So
if you have a look there, there's a...
That is like a whole cage of needles in the bottom of this sump. Like that is some horrendous stuff.
Yeah, and they are hardened. So
yeah,
when they get into places, they're not usually the thing that wears.
No. Usually if one of them gets sucked up by the pickup, if I manage to make it past the gauze in the pickup, it's oil pump. And then it's everything else, as you know.
The other thing they can get, like they get in between your rods and counterweights, or if they jam between a piston and a bore or something like that, it just destroys things very quickly.
So anyway, this is specifically why we always point people in the direction of trunnion upgrades. They're around $300 extra on top of your cam kit, and for the peace of mind of not having this happen, that's money well spent if you ask me. That's why anything that we do that's LS, that we want to rev, or anything that always has trunnion upgrades, all of our personal LS cars that we built have trunnion upgrades. Both the drift cars have trunnion upgrades, the cruiser's got trunnion upgrades. So what the trunnion upgrade is it replaces this needle roller trunnion bearing with a solid hardened bush. What's the steel? It's not. People often refer to it as a brass bush, but it's not actually brass. Oil impregnated bronze, we're pretty sure is what they actually are, but commonly referred to as a brass bush. But it replaces all those needles so that they're no longer in your engine to fail. So anyway, that's where we're at with the VE. We've also found we actually finally pulled the LSA blower out of the box that it was given to us in by the owner. So pulling it out of the box, we've realised that there's a lot of missing parts. The belt tensioner is missing. There's heaps of missing stuff. So we're now having to go through the motions of having to track down all the parts that are missing and buy extra parts. Because the original plan for this car, when he first approached us and he wanted us to supercharge it for him, we were going to put a Magnuson 2300 blower on it. You can get the full Magnuson kits for a pretty good price. It works out pretty well. But he ended up finding this in the process of between then and now for a really good price. So we thought we can't argue with that, but it's starting to prove another one of those things where it ends up sort of costing in the long run, because now we have to source a whole heap of other things that we thought should have come with it. But anyway, that's what happens. It's all part of the game. So this is sort of where it is for now. So whoever put this thing together really didn't have any idea what they were really doing. They've just absolutely punished this thing with silicon. Those of you who don't know, LS gaskets are all pretty much rubber. What do you call it? Rubber over steel? Steel backed rubber. You don't need to use silicon if the gasket's in good condition. Like, there's no need for silicon in most LS gasket applications. And this is just ridiculous. It's really pissed Rex off. He's really angry now.
It was a perfectly good gasket, now it's fucked. I'm going to replace it.
Obviously not to mention the fact that they left the motor full of metal. Righto, so the big girl's coming further and further apart. We're pulling this down. We're doing a cam package as well as supercharging this SS. So we're doing a Crow Cams 1288, which is the same cam we actually put in that LS3, black LS3 Maloo we did not too long ago, that we actually made some content on as well. So a fairly angry cam, which coupled with this supercharger should make some decent grunt. So it's getting new timing set. It already had a Mellings standard volume pump on it, which will just go back on it. Our 1288 Crow Cams grind, some big dual springs, some new lifters, new push rods, and should be party time for this thing with this blower on it. So it already had a VCM cam kit. I believe it was 21 VCM. It was only a baby cam though.
Yeah, it's
very small, very conservative cam. So we thought, considering we were going supercharger and we're doing a converter anyway, we just thought we'd stick a cranky stick in it, one that we know gets pretty good results, and this thing should be a weapon with a little bit of boost. My apologies guys, it's actually a 1287, not a 1288. So I've got the cam card here. So it is a, what do we got? 227, 244, and a 114. We've got our new Street Fighter drop-in fuel pump hanger. We are going to a flex fuel system with this thing, so will be E85. So we've got new injectors and new springs. I've also got trunnion upgrade, obviously, as I was talking about before. Some ARP head bolts, among a few other things, but we'll go through this as we install and upgrade these things. So should be a really cranky little combo. Alright, so it's been a big day doing heads. We've got our heads here all nice and cleaned up. Our valves and seats have been ground and lapped. You can see under there, so big day of head stuff. So I've actually had another set of cathedral port heads to do for another customer today as well. This is the other square port head. You can see them seats all done, everything's cleaned up, so it's sort of, they're getting ready to start going back together. Rex is just over there grinding doing some lapping on these cathedral port heads. That one's ready to get lapped up now, and I am about to start installing all of the trunnion upgrades. So I've got two sets of rockers here, but obviously these are the ones for the Supercharged engine. These are the cathedral port rockers. So to do these trunnion upgrades, we actually started when we first started doing them, we were using the press. It used to take us ages. We quickly found that you actually don't need the press. You don't need to press them too hard. So a little setup like this is perfect. It's actually perfect because the trunnion cage falls straight down that hole. We've got this shaft that we actually turn down to fit properly. So you just press that out one side, and then I've got a trunnion here which I keep handy. So I press that out one side, it pops the trunnion and the cage out, and then I flip it over and I put that in, and then I press the other cage out, and that's that pressed out. And then I'll take you through how we actually put the upgraded trunnions into the rockers when it comes time. But this is going to take me probably most of the afternoon getting all these done. It is a time consuming process, but as you saw with this engine, it's definitely worth doing. Alright, so with all our needle rollers and everything punched out, we then come over to the vise here. So these are our trunnion upgrade kits. As you can see, impregnated bronze bush, and then they are circlip trunnion arm. If I can get this out, frick me sideways. Alright, so the trunnion arm, you can see it has a groove on the ends. There's your circlips which actually clip them onto the trunnion. I'll show you when it's done. Anyway, to actually have these little washers which we use with the vise just to squish them into the trunnion, to the rocker. It's very simple. And that there is a final product with the circlips in. You can see how that is. So there's no needle rollers to fail now. That's much more reliable. Certainly much better for an engine you plan to be revving pretty hard. So quick lap up and get reassembled. So that's these cathedrals just about ready to go out the door. That's finished one, fresh stem seals. This one's just got single springs. This one's got a mild cam. The heads, the thing these heads are going on is only very mild cam, but yeah, head service, freshen up, and deck. Anyway, not that has anything to do with the LSA build. So here we are with our 6-litre heads ready to get assembled. Our trunnion upgraded rockers down there ready to go. So these are actually getting double springs. So they're over here. Some Crow double springy boys there. But anyway, it's just been a pretty big day of just cleaning stuff. I thought I'd spare use the content of the cleaning. I've done a fair few of these builds where I do make content of all the cleaning. I think it's about as much fun to watch as it is to do. So I just figured I'd skip it for this one. It's pretty self-explanatory. Building engines, the biggest thing about it, doing anything with engines, if it's not clean enough that you'd eat off it, it shouldn't be going in your engine. So needless to say, it's a long and monotonous process to prepare all this stuff and clean it all. Doing things like this trunnion upgrade and stuff like that, it just takes ages. So we like to do a big day of preparation and get all this cleaning done and have it all ready to go, so that we can, you know, when it comes to assembling, you just get on a roll and you get in and get it done, and you don't have to stop and clean and then continue and stop and clean. You keep walking stuff in and out. It's just get everything clean, put it in the engine room, have it all ready to go, and then you sort of just do a big hit of just getting the engine built, or in this case not so much the engine built, but the upgrade done and the heads back on. So that's what today's been all about, but we'll pick it up tomorrow. Well, probably not tomorrow, I've got tuning to do tomorrow, but next time we're working on it, we'll pick up the video again. What's up guys, it is assembly day. So, we've got everything here, ready to start assembling this engine. We are waiting on a few things still from the parts shop. We did just order a timing chain. Usually we find with these sorts of things, like LSs with this sort of case, you can just put a new chain in and you don't have to really worry about the actual set. But this set particularly was a bit funny. This gear was really stuck on the crank. It actually was really hard to get off. So we were pretty keen on this thing to actually just replace it with a full set. So we ordered a set, so we're still waiting on that to get here. Hopefully it'll be here sometime today, but either way, it's not going to stop us actually getting most of this engine together. So Rex actually did a bit of more work yesterday afternoon after I went home and assembled our heads. So we've got our new chrome double springs here on our freshly cleaned, serviced heads. As you've seen, yes, the new rockers are ready to go. Sorry guys, I know that when you watch this, it's just repeating a lot of stuff. It's just because for me, it's like a day apart, I forget stuff. But anyway, we're ready to go. So, start assembling this thing, which is nice because it's a really hot day. And we really like LSs, and it's really nice and cool in here with the aircon going, and I'm just excited to be in here building this LS today. Ooh, fresh big boy stick. So we're just going to degree this bad boy in, make sure he's right on the cam card. Alright, we're all degreed in. Our fresh head gaskets, heads are going on with our fresh ARP head bolts. Alright, well, we're back at a stalemate. Sorry I didn't film much today guys, I was actually busy doing 1.5J things while Rex was doing this. But yeah, we're back at a stalemate because we still don't have our timing set, and there's not really much else we can do with our timing set. Put the rockers on, makes it a bitch to get the timing set on it if we need to move the cam. We can't put the oil pump on because we need the timing set, which means we can't put a pickup on, which means we can't put the windows tray or sump on or anything, so it's sort of just where it is now. We still need a valley cover gasket as well, so we can't even get like the top end on, can't even sort of fit the blower or anything like that. So unfortunately, just another one of those things where we hit a wall and the parts that we needed today didn't end up rocking up. So anyway, we'll continue on next week. Righto guys, we're back on the Supercharged build. So we finally received the timing set that we needed to complete this engine, or to continue with it at the very least. We've also received our new pulley and idler kit for the Supercharger. So at the moment we're just going to test fit our new LSA water pump and all of our new pulleys, etc. Make sure everything's going to fit and work before we continue on actually getting this motor back together and buttoned up. Yay! So you need the LSA water pump because on the regular LS water pumps the output neck is on the wrong side and it doesn't actually work with the way the Supercharger is set up. So have to go to the LSA water pump setup. And then this is our new box of idlers and tensioners, etc. for the Supercharger. So it sucks that we've had to go through and buy this stuff for the customer. As we talked about, he bought the Supercharger second hand. It makes it a little bit more expensive than he expected. But it is still going to come in cheaper than if we were to buy him a Magnuson like we were originally looking at. So still works out a little mildly cheaper, but it's just a shame that it didn't come with everything it needed like it was advertised as. But that's the gamble you play with buying second-hand parts. So another important thing I just wanted to point out to you guys when you're doing these sort of high-powered LSs, particularly supercharged ones where you have a crank-driven, you know, ancillary supercharger sort of thing, is to pin the crank. So as a lot of you guys know, the factory LS cranks are not pinned or keywayed in any way. The balancer is just an interference fit. It also forms the front main seal. It pretty much just bolts up onto the crank there, and it generally doesn't cause an issue. It generally just stays there and does its thing and everything's fine. But when you start pushing heaps of power, you know, sort of over 500 horsepower is a pretty good rule, and particularly when you're driving a supercharger from that pulley, you really need some sort of keyway or what we call a pin, which is what this is. So this is a kit to actually pin the balancer to the crank. For something like this, we're going to opt for 2 pins, one each side, and that actually just sort of ensures that that balancer is not going to turn on the crank, because once it starts to turn, it creates a lot of heat, friction heat, which causes big problems for the crank. So that's another pretty important thing we're going to be doing to this motor, being that it's going to be pretty high power supercharged LS. So. Oh, alright. We are looking pretty gravy. Alright, so the other thing we've got to do, which is quite typical of aftermarket timing sets, is we actually have a timing gear for the cam that is a Torrington bearing there. So it's a Torrington bearing, which means we have to actually chamfer and clearance the cam backing plate to accommodate for where the bearing thrust surface is.
Yeah, it's just that.
More importantly, this edge here that's not part of the thrust surface is what we have to accommodate for.
Yes.
So I've got to go ahead and chamfer that. This is very common of pretty much doing any aftermarket timing set on an LS. Not everyone does this. A lot of people skip it, and you can see here what happens when it's not done properly, and it wears on the actual cam backing plate and damages it. So certainly not an ideal thing to be happening, those rubbing on each other. So it's just, it's quite simple. It's just a little chamfer of that edge. It's not a very hard thing to do. I don't know why people don't do it. Fresh front main. Hell yeah. Alright, that's what it looks like after you drill out the crank for the pins. So that's just like a little guide. Measure the depth, mark it on the drill bit, do some drilling. Feels a bit funny drilling into your crank, but alright, so then this is a little reamer tool that comes with the kit also, which actually correctly sizes the holes for the pins. And Bob's your irony now, just a very, very thorough cleanup. And we knock in some pins, seal up some holes, and there you have a actual pinned crank for the supercharger drive. Right, and we're all cleaned up, ready for a couple of pin boys. When we're pinned, and obviously given that the LSAs are a keywayed balancer from factory, that keyway goes all the way through to the other side of the balancer, which is a wet area, so we have to make sure that that is sealed up. So we just chuck a little bit of RTV in there. The bolts should seal around here as well, but it's just a little bit of extra insurance to make sure it's not going to leak oil out the front there. So that's your install of the LSA balancer. So given the LSA balancers are keywayed, they would be balanced from factory. You know, the best thing to do would be to, if you're doing a build like this from start, pulling the whole thing down would be to get that balancer balanced with the rest of the rotating assembly. However, the issue that it presents is negligible compared to the cost of doing so when you're building a bottom end that's already together that you don't plan on pulling apart. So considering this was a relatively low case bottom end, there's nothing wrong with it. No reason to pull it apart. There's no real reason to pull it all down and get that done. It's a lot of cost and a lot of labor for something that's not a huge detrimental importance. You know, it's not like the thing's going to be revving to 8,500 RPM. So just thought I'd touch on that so you guys know that we are aware of that, but that is why we don't particularly bother with this sort of thing. Alright, so we've got these VCM 80,000 push rods, which came out of this motor that are going straight back in. Not bad, looking good. Looking bloody grouse. Dum dum da da dum dum. About that ba la la da. There we go, boys and girls. For illustrative purposes, supercharger is on. It's not going to stay on at the moment because you need to get the motor in the car before the supercharger goes on for its final fitment. But there you can paint a picture. Pretty keen to get this in the car and get the rest of it finished off, get our flex fuel setup done, see what we can push out of it. Pretty excited. Alright guys, that's going to be the end of this episode for the Supercharged 6-litre build. I started editing this and realised that it's going to be way too long, and it's going to be too long to try and fit in one episode. So, I'm going to cut it into 2. So thank you for watching. As always, smash like, smash subscribe. and stay tuned for episode 2, where you'll see us put it back in the car and see what sort of results we can get. So thanks guys, peace out.